All right, I'm here right now with Sam. How you doing, Sam?
Very good, thanks. How
Good
are
to
you?
see you again.
Yeah, you too.
This is Sam Helfrich. He is the director of Virginia Opera's new production of Ariadne auf Naxos. And I understand this is a very good opera to go see.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, a lot of people, it's sort of widely talked about in the opera world as kind of the perfect opera because it's an opera about performers and about people in the opera world. And it raises a lot of really interesting contemporary questions. It raises questions about why we love opera, why we go to the opera. It talks about who funds opera. It talks about who the art form supporters are, and it also raises questions about different forms of entertainment. So it's just it is kind of perfect, and also its structure is so great because it starts out as a very almost farcical comedy, and then becomes something very serious in the second act, but the seriousness is sort of constantly interrupted by comedy. And then at a certain point, all of that goes away, and it really becomes entirely about music, which I think is the composer, which is Strauss's sort of a way of reminding us that really overriding everything else, the reason why we come to the opera is for music, you know.
So music is truly one of the biggest themes in this opera,
Yeah,
I would say.
yeah. The composer, there's a character of the composer in the first act, and the composer has an aria, and in the aria he sings, music is the Heilige Kunst in German, which means the holiest of art forms, and or the most sacred of art forms, and it's obviously a point that Strauss was trying to make.
I've noticed that your directorial style is different than anything I've ever seen. What is it about your directorial style? What is it that you bring to the table that makes these operas so interesting, different?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what other directors do so much. So I don't know if what I do is so different. But what I know is that it's very important to me to bring the art form to people as something contemporary and as something that's very alive. I don't want people to treat opera as some kind of museum art form. So I'm not that interested in sort of traditional interpretations of the pieces. I think it's much more fun to look at older pieces from a modern lens.
Sure.
And to try to think about why the stories are relevant today. Again, with Ariadne auf Naxos, this country is in kind of a crisis in terms of funding for the arts and who's going to pay for it. And we all feel that it's very important, but no one can figure out who should pay for it. And that's a question that's asked directly in this opera. So that feels like a very contemporary conversation to me.
Yeah.
And something like Orphée, which I did here a couple years ago, it's based on a story that takes place in the 40s, but we felt that the piece was so modern, and we wanted to give it a modern interpretation, and we wanted to make it something that people would watch with the same kind of engagement that they would watch television or go to a movie,
Right. So it sounds like going to see a show that you direct. It seems like it's something that a newbie to the opera world would enjoy and might get them hooked. To reel them into the opera world, as well as people that have been into it for a while.
I would hope so. I mean, that's otherwise why do it really? Because I'm here to do something that I hope people find interesting, of course. And I do think I'd love to see younger people come to the opera. Here at Virginia Opera, there's a great opportunity because ticket prices aren't that high, and it seems like it is a great opportunity to bring young people in. But I think if you bring a lot of us have real stereotypical notions of what opera is, and I think if you bring a new audience into the theater and show them that that's not all it is, that it's a lot more, that can be really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how did you get started in the opera world?
Well, I come from a theater background, but I early on, even while I was still in grad school studying theater, I started to get interested in shifting more toward opera. So I just started trying to find jobs in the business, and then that just led from one thing to another, and the next thing I knew, it's what I was doing. It had been like a passive interest of mine when I was still doing more spoken theater, but it just sort of the passion took over at a certain point, and for many years now, I think probably 12 or 13 years, it's all I've been doing is opera.
How how explain your process of directing from when you first get an assignment to opening night.
Well, the first thing I do is assemble a team. So the team is the set designer, the costume designer, and the lighting designer. And I put that team together, and then we start to meet regularly. We start to talk about the piece. We try to sort of explore it dramaturgically, and we do a lot of research into visual images that might be interesting to us, that might connect to the piece. We start to make some decisions about what kind of period we want to set it in, whether we want to do a contemporary take. So I don't do every opera contemporary. I mean, last year I did Streetcar Named Desire here, and that's set in the 40s, and we set it in the 40s, you know. And so we just start to talk about the piece, and then the set designer will start to bring a model into the meetings, and we'll start to look at a version of the set in the model, and we'll start to move things around, and slowly but surely, usually we'll spend a good 6 to 8 months developing the design. And then we'll present it to the company, and we'll start to negotiate with the company about how much it's going to cost and how it's going to get built and how the costumes will get built and things like that. And then that's all sort of like a warm-up for actually getting into rehearsal and starting to work with the singers, which is where I'm at now with Ariadne.
Right.
And I tend to be a director who has a very clear idea of what I want when I come into rehearsal, so I don't like to waste a lot of time kind of just experimenting, but at the same time I love what singers bring to the table, so I very much want the process to be collaborative, and oftentimes I'll come in with an idea and someone will have a variation of the idea or a different idea, and we'll talk about it, and sometimes the new idea takes over and sometimes we come up with a hybrid, and
Sure.
and the storytelling evolves through that.
Excellent, excellent. So now this particular show, it sounds like it's really funny. It's got a lot of comedy.
It's a
to it.
comedy, yeah, definitely.
Right.
And I want to go for the comedy. I mean, it's the comedy troupe. That's 5 of the characters in the piece. You know, they're a comedy troupe, and their antics are funny. I want to use my background in physical theater to give them a lot of funny physical choreography. And the situation's funny because there's one group of people in the second act who are trying to put on a very serious opera,
Right.
but they've been told that the comedy has to take place at the same time on the same stage. So there's this very serious opera which is kind of making fun of assumptions about opera at the same time. It's a little bit too serious and a little bit
Right.
too self-involved. And the comedians are trying to sort of lighten up the whole thing by doing some singing and some dancing, and
Right.
it's just the situation sort of spins out of control after a while.
Oh, wow, this sounds fantastic.
Yeah,
Sounds-
it's a great piece. It's really funny.
It sounds like it's going to be wonderful. Well, we're very, very lucky to have the opportunity to see Ariadne auf Naxos put on by Virginia Opera. It's going to be performing in Norfolk, Virginia on February 7th, February 9th, and February 11th. It's playing in Fairfax, Virginia on February 14th and February 16th, and then in Richmond, Virginia on February 21st and February 23rd. And you can get more information and purchase tickets at vaopera.org. Thank you so much, Sam.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.